Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Festival of Trusteeship, to our Speakers Corner session. Just give it a couple of seconds for everyone to come in and connect to audio. Whilst we do that, the screen that I've got showing up just shows the housekeeping rules for running this session. The session will be recorded. You will get a copy of the recording afterwards, and if you're a weekly pass holder, you will get a summary of all the recordings towards the end of the week. Please stay muted on the call unless you're asked to unmute. It just helps us to make sure that everybody can hear who is talking clearly. Closed captions have been enabled. You just need to turn them on from your end. Please use the chat to ask questions and share experiences. This is running slightly differently. We have 7 speakers for you today, running 3-minute sessions each. So what we'd like you to do is, if you're asking a question to the speaker, is to put a question mark and their name in front of the question, just so it helps us separate it. And we'll take questions as we get towards the end of the session, and Julie will cover that again for those people that are just being admitted. The second thing to say is, please also do ignore the chat if you want to. If it is distracting for you and you can't keep an eye on it whilst also focusing on the content, feel free to just ignore it. You will also get a sort of copy of the chat in the recording, because the two come together. We've got another networking session at the end of today's events as well, which we'll share details with you at the end. Please do come along to that and just reflect on your day, but also meet other people who might be sharing similar challenges to you as you work on your board and on your trusteeship. Last 2 things from me is thanks to our media partner, Third Sector, and to our sponsors, Ecclesiastical. Their support has meant that the maximum cost for any event is just £5, with many of them free, including the Aspiring Trustees strand. So if you came to the What is a Trustee and How do I Become One session that I ran yesterday, that was one of those fully funded sessions. So without further ado, over to Julie.
Thank you so much, Leon, for the intro. Welcome everybody to Speakers Corner. I'm really excited about what I hope is going to be a really fun format for this session. We have a fantastic set of panelists. They've all been invited to come and give a 3-minute Room 101 style pitch on a single bold idea that could improve trusteeship or board practice. And the ideas that get a more detailed debate will be chosen by you. You have the power as the audience in this session. So I will introduce each panelist. They'll have 3 minutes to pitch their idea. I will sound this rather noisy QI style klaxon when their time is up, whether they finish their pitch or not. Harsh, I know, but 3 minutes is the rules. And after each pitch, you'll be asked to vote yes or no on the idea. So to be super clear on what we're asking you to vote on. If you vote yes, it means you think this is a great idea. We should definitely talk about that further. And if you vote no, you mean that's a crazy idea. That isn't something we should support. You can vote yes as often as you like. It's an indication of your support. Likewise, you can vote no as often as you like if you disagree. We are using Zoom poll functionality to manage that vote. So if for some reason you don't have that because of your version of Zoom, or you're on a phone and you find you can't use the polling, then just pop your yes or no in the chat. And the wonderful Getting on Board team, they'll be tallying up your votes, doing all the mental arithmetic. And around halfway point in the session, we'll reveal the bold ideas that have got the most support from you. And we'll open the session up to a Q&A format. So then you can ask more questions of those particular panelists about their ideas. So please do use the chat to submit those questions. By all means, share them before we get to the Q&A, and we select those for those ideas that have the most votes. And as Leon said, just a super clear reminder, preface your question with a question mark and the name of the person presenting the idea. And that means we can distinguish questions from general comments and hubbub in the chat. So hopefully that's super clear. So we're going to get started. I'm excited. I can't wait to hear these. So first up is Jill. Welcome, Jill. So Jill's proposal is we should be less exclusive about who we recruit as trustees. Jill, your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Trustee boards are filled with people who've reached a point in their life or career where they've got the time and space to share their expertise and space and contribute to our charities. And they do this really valuably. But there is a perception that people need a business, legal, or financial background to become a trustee. But what about people at the start of their careers? People who aren't in the workplace, who may be in a junior role, self-employed, carers. They may have skills and insight that would make a really valuable contribution to our boards, but they feel excluded and unable to apply to be trustees. As part of my preparation for this talk, I was reading through some job adverts on the internet for trustees, and I came across lots of jargon and acronyms. For example, one charity which said it was open to people who didn't have previous trustee experience, but expected strategic oversight and leadership, strong interpersonal and networking skills, the ability to apply good governance and legal compliance, and it went on. But I wondered if people that we want to attract understand the terminology, and if so, if you aren't in a senior management position, how do you demonstrate that you've got these skills? Way back in the 1960s, my dad started a children's sailing club at the end of our road, where all the trustee roles were held by under 16s. The experience taught them that leadership skills, people management, finance. It gave them responsibility and self-confidence and lasted for about 16 years. So it wasn't just a flash in the pan. I'm not saying our board should be filled by under 16s, but we need to consider the skills and insights that people with different backgrounds and levels of experience could bring. Another job application that I saw was much more open. Our role is to be a critical friend to the senior leadership team, to have oversight of the running of the organisation and support and drive the achievement of our strategy. Whether you're an experienced trustee or interested in taking on your first trustee role, we'd love to hear from you. I propose that we need to be far less exclusive about who we recruit as trustees if we're going to fill the thousands of empty vacancies that currently exist. Our job descriptions and adverts must be much more appealing. We need to consider when we hold board meetings. Could we remunerate people for their time or their travel? Could we set up some sort of shadow post to build confidence and experience? And I read today, the best boards have people from across society, sectors, backgrounds, and demographics. We need to be more creative in our trustee recruitment. Thank you.
Oh, Jill, I was just about to hit the klaxon. You timed that absolutely perfectly. Brilliant, brilliant job. That set the standard, hasn't it? So thank you for opening the poll. So for Jill, you can vote now. If you've got the polling functionality, again, use chat if you don't. Do we support Jill's proposal about being less exclusive about who we recruit as trustees? Please cast your vote now. Thank you very much. Suspense is killing me. I can't wait to see the votes when they come in at the end. I'm having way too much fun with this. So second up is Ian. Welcome, Ian. And Ian's proposal is we must put beneficiaries at the centre of what charities do, brackets, because we don't, close brackets. Your 3 minutes, Ian. Make sure you're off mute. Starts now.
Right, rant mode activating. Charity cost of living crisis, 1 billion in funding cuts, no recovery before 2025. There is something trustees can do right now. We all talk about our beneficiaries and lived experience on boards and diversity, blah. The reality is that far too many charities deliver for those running them, not those they should be run for. My first chief exec role 20 years ago, I asked the beneficiaries what was important to them, ran a survey, and then built it into the business plan. And then dragged the directors around each business unit and briefed everyone on what they told us and what we're going to do about it, and that we'd back in 12 months to tell them how we'd done. The directors and some trustees absolutely bloody hated it. The annual feedback survey was the best that we had ever had. We were doing things that we thought were exciting, not boring things that made the beneficiaries happy. And some of what we were doing, they didn't actually like it at all. I've seen the same thing again and again since then. And that's not just me ranting. Well, it is. But charity excellence has created big data for the sector. The 4 poorest results for beneficiaries are all not seeking feedback or addressing unmet need. All are amber. That means we're not doing them well. In our recent trustee survey, one of the weakest areas was seeking the views of beneficiaries and taking their wishes into account. I'm not saying that, the trustees are saying that. We're so passionate, we know what they want. We don't need to ask them. And don't get me started on collaboration. People who collaborate are focused on the beneficiaries. Those who compete are focused on themselves. So why are so many doing it? It's the single biggest missed opportunity that the charity sector has, and we've got very few. What we need are charity boards that will stand up and be counted and put their beneficiaries at the centre of decision making and actively collaborate with others. And I can give you 60,417 reasons why that works. Charity excellence is relentlessly focused on its charities, and that's how many members we had an hour ago. I rest my case. Thank you.
Oh, very good, Ian. Well within your 3 minutes. So time to vote on Ian's proposal about putting beneficiaries at the centre of what charities do. And his proposition is we don't do that well enough at the moment. So please vote yes or no on that proposal. Thank you so much, Ian, for coming and giving such an impassioned plea there. So our third panelist is Damon. So Damon's proposal is that trustees should move to digital decision making rather than being meeting centric. So Damon, your 3 minutes starts now.
Thanks, Julie. I'm not going to be quite as impassioned as Ian's excellent speech was, but as we're all moving now to a point where anything can be done by AI, a little bit too much, depending on who you ask, and we're all working from home, we all have busy lives. Fact is that we have long board meetings, and the fact is that we have to have face-to-face meetings is well outdated, and also prevents people from becoming trustees. People have caring responsibilities, people with disabilities. So my proposal is fivefold. My idea is to move to more of a digital hub focused model rather than purely face-to-face meetings. Just to be clear, this is not to replace face-to-face meetings. They're hugely valuable. But the idea of using a digital hub allows us to communicate better the things we don't need, allowing us to have one-to-one discussions, in-person virtual meetings, and no more rushing after work to meet because we really care about a cause, but it's the other side of town and it's rush hour. Easy access to information. We all, as trustees, need the latest information we can, whether that's accounts, reports, whatever. And by using digital hubs, it allows us to keep it all centralized in one place, rather than most people now have a folder full of items and they may not be current. They may be secure documents that they shouldn't be carrying anyway. On a similar note, transparency is really key to that. So by doing so, it allows us to track work much more effectively and be much more transparent, and that's really good governance as well. It allows us to save costs. You know, we're not printing, we're not moving, and also the environmental costs and the time taken for trustees. And also it's scalable. So I'm a trustee at a very, very small charity. I've also been a trustee at a much larger one. And irrespective of where you are, this actually could work quite easily for a very small one. Actually, one of the smallest charities I'm a trustee at has actually put this in, and it works fantastically. But I really believe this is where we're heading now that we can access everything from our phones to our tablets. And the fact is that, you know, the days of meeting face to face every single time are kind of done. So that's my pitch.
Thank you so much, Damon. Oh, you're all being so good. I'm not getting to make that horrible klaxon noise, which is probably quite a good thing for our ears, frankly.
Sorry,
It's quite all right. The poll is now open. So Damon's proposal there on the screen to vote on. Another great pitch. While you're voting on there, we get Tony ready and on the screen for our fourth proposal. So have we got Tony? Is his video on? Let me just check. I can't see him at the moment. Have we got Tony here? If not, I shall move on. There's a nod. There's Tony. Thank you, sir. So Tony's proposal, brief and to the point, this is lovely, is bin the treasurer. Your 3 minutes starts now, Tony.
Thank you very much. As a starter, there is no legal requirement to have a treasurer, either a company's house or a charity commission. Indeed, if you read the 20-page publication, How to Find a New Trustee, it uses the word trustee 372 times and the word treasurer only once. One time in 20 pages where it says trustee 372 times. Makes you think, doesn't it? If the Charity Commission thought having a treasurer was important, they would legislate for it, especially after recent cases like the Captain Tom Foundation, building a swimming pool and then having knocked down and the other trustees not knowing about it. Trustees, and this means all trustees, have 6 duties, and they are the responsibility of all equally. Let us focus in on duty number 4 and duty number 6. Duty number 4, manage the charity resources responsibly, also known as the duty of prudence. You and your co-trustees should put appropriate measures and safeguards in place to take reasonable steps to ensure these are followed. It does not say that you should delegate these tasks to one person, i.e. the treasurer, and by doing so, you're creating a single point of dependency, something internal audit would say you shouldn't do. And by default, you're creating a risk. Number 2.6, ensure your charity is accountable. You and your co-trustees, again, co-trustees, must comply with statutory requirements and reporting requirements. This is in line with the recent updated accounting standards. ISA 315 and ISA 240 are going to put an extra burden on organisations, including charities. There'll be more scrutiny around system and controls, fraud prevention and risk assessments, very much creating a spectrum of risk where all members of the executive and trustees have a shared responsibility. Recruiting good trustees is hard. There are 668,000 charities across England and Wales, just under 1 million trustees. Recruiting treasurers is even harder. Save yourself the hassle and just recruit good trustees instead. Financial stewardship is the equal responsibility of all, not one. If your charity gets into financial trouble, even if you do not know about it, about the how or the why, you are still responsible. Please note that. I'm here to say that in 2023, having a treasurer is no longer working smart and no longer perceived as robust and effective governance. My name is Tony Lawler, and believe it or not, I am a qualified accountant. I am a Grant Thornton associate. I am a chair of an audit committee, and I do access the AOC Beacon Awards in Excellence in Governance. And I am very much advocating the treasurer role should be disbanded. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony. Look at that, 5 seconds within the 3 minutes. What a fabulous set of panelists being so on it here. Thank you so much. So Tony's proposal there, Bin the Treasurer, up on your screen for voting on. Thank you so much for that very impassioned proposal. So 5th up and next up is Basma. Welcome, Basma. Basma's proposal is that charities working internationally should have international trustees with relevant lived experience on their boards. Your 3 minutes starts now, Basma.
Thank you so much. I am discussing now the importance of having lived experiences voices and lived experiences personnel on the board of trustee when you are having an international charity or UK charity but working in certain sectors that have multicultural dimensions to the people or to the backgrounds of people that you are working with. Let's say I come from a very extensive professional background, having more than 15 years of experience working with displaced communities in Middle East and in the UK. And I find it very useful when I was, and I am in now as a trustee in many organizations that are working in migration sector. I do believe that lived experience as an experience itself, a life trajectory, but also experience in the sector really bring a lot of valuable insights and also reflections about how to train communities and to train stakeholders and frontliners who are working in the sector, like in the UK, the migration sector or detention sector, the advocacy sector, in understanding the diversity, the life experiences, displacement experiences, and migration experiences from lived experience personnel, and how also you we can use that lived experience in the board as a tool of changing the narrative or challenging the status quo and empowering lived experiences, empowering people to have meaningful, powerful, and participatory engagement that empower also the charity and empower the sector itself. And we, by working collectively and trying to understand the importance and the value of meaningful lived experiences in the board of trustee, will help us to build more meaningful and positive interventions, advocacy, lobbying, and also more meaningful impact on not on the people that we are working with, but also make us feel aligned with the values that we carry inside the sector or inside the charity as well. And these skills can be transformational as well, because these people can transform such skills from the trustee role to their communities, to the individual in their communities, and also to other small scale grassroots organizations and charity as well, internationally and also in the UK. So it's very important now to start to ask us the question about what's the value, the real value and the impact of having international lived experiences and voices in the trustee board if we are working with migration, detention, and sectors that work with people who are not from the UK. Thank you so much.
Oh, Basma, brilliant. 5 seconds in 3 minutes again. Wow, look at this. We could start a debating society here, I think, getting on board. We could, couldn't we? Fabulous. Another great pitch. Thank you so much, Basma. Please feel free to vote in the poll that's on your screen. 2 to go. So 6th up is Katie. Welcome, Katie. Katie's proposal is all first-time trustees must complete mandatory training. Your 3 minutes starts now, Katie.
Thank you. So when someone becomes a trustee for the first time, they're often thrown in at the deep end. And the reality is that as a first-time trustee, you have to go and do your own research into what a trustee role and responsibilities are. Often your research starts and ends on a charity commission website, or you learn from friends who have or are trustees, or you see if you can find any useful training online, or you hope the charity you're joining has sufficient information, training, and resources to upskill you from the get-go. But the issue is that as a first-time trustee, you might not even know where to start your research. You might not know anyone who is a trustee, or you might be joining a charity that doesn't have the resources to provide that specific training to upskill you from the get-go. And this means that each individual who's new to trusteeship will have a different foundational understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are, but also it means that they won't be set up in the strongest position to make a positive impact from their get-go. And also, in some cases, this could put people off applying to be a trustee in the first place if they're not even sure where to start with their upskilling. And I guess it's important to note at this point that there are a lot of trainings out there and a lot of them are free, but a lot of these trainings are on specific topics and they may seem disjointed to someone who is starting out new in their trusteeship journey and doesn't provide that first up holistic experience and training for them. So this made me think about how can we make sure that all first time trustees have an equally informed foundational understanding of what it is expected of them, what their roles are, what their responsibilities are, no matter what charity they're becoming a trustee of. And that's why my idea is to introduce mandatory training that all first time trustees must attend. And I think this would be great because it means that everyone can make a positive impact from the get-go. It means that they can meet other trustees from other charities from across the country who are all on a similar journey to themselves. It means that they can explore and share ideas in that safe training environment. They can build their network right from the get-go, meet people from across the country. It also could help them in their trustee development journey, taking the pressure off smaller charities to train people. But also if people do aspire to move on to chair committees or to chair up boards in general, it can help on that development journey from the get-go. It also means that everyone can have access to equal resources, whether that's templates or training materials that they can then keep to themselves and look back at future. And also it means that everyone will have an equal understanding of what's expected from them as well. And I think overall this will increase the quality of trusteeships and it could encourage others to sign up who aren't sure whether to make that leap. And I guess just some general thoughts on this. It could be, everyone in their first 3 months of appointment has to go on this mandatory training. Obviously, it could be held virtually. And stopping, go on, do the buzzer. I had to go over. Someone had to.
Oh, Katie, I'm so happy you let me press the buzzer. Thank you so much. A great pitch from Katie on all first-time trustees completing mandatory training. The poll is on your screen. Please do vote. Oh, thank you, Katie, for letting me press the button. I know you were really there. You were just stringing it out to let me press it, weren't you? And so last but definitely not least is Steve. And what a great title for a proposal. So Steve's proposal is let babies run boards. I can't wait for this one. Steve, your 3 minutes starts now.
Thanks, Julie. I'm really surprised you left me till last, because I think this is probably the most sensible proposal of all the ones we've heard so far. What am I doing here alongside such sensible suggestions? I feel like I didn't get the memo that it's not actually a fancy dress party and I shouldn't have come dressed as a clown. But I was on a holiday when Penny messaged me about this. I sent her a list of silly ideas and she said, I love silly. And I feel now like Penny said, come dressed as a clown. Everyone's going to be in fancy dress. But here we are. So apparently there's some sensible points and daft ideas. So here we go. I've worked in charities for a long time. I've been a trustee. I've worked with trustees. I hear about the same challenges. And I think letting babies run boards is the answer. It'll make it more enjoyable for trustees and staff. A lot of people talk about trustee recruitment problems. We know exactly where babies are. Get down to the maternity unit, get your leaflets, get down there, get them early on. So no more recruitment issues, no more long rambling agendas, no more trustees falling asleep during meetings. Babies have got an attention span of just 2 or 3 minutes. So that agenda has to be short, it has to be punchy. No more long reports. I've been to meetings where the papers run to like 80 pages, 90 pages, not anymore. By the age of 1, babies only know 50 words. So you can expect summaries that really are summaries and briefings which really are brief. Improve relationships between the board and the staff team. When a CEO says, oh, my chair's an absolute nightmare, I can say, oh, but look at him, he's so cute. You wouldn't do that, would you? No, you wouldn't. Reduce conflict when people say, oh, the trustee threw his toys out the pram, the trustee spat their dummy out. Well, of course they did. They're just a baby. Come on, give them a break. Honest conversations. A lot of trustees get worried about looking daft or making a mistake. Babies have got no self-awareness, so that's not going to be a problem. If they have a bad experience on the board, if you're worried about confidentiality, apparently babies forget everything from their first 3 years. So no GDPR concerns. It's all done and dusted. It's going to make the treasurer's report easier to understand. They can bring their abacus, bring their number blocks and really simplify things. It's going to be easier to engage with the staff team. Everyone's going to want to see the trustees for cuddles on a regular basis. And babies use twice as much energy as adults. So the meetings finish twice as fast, which is really good because they've all got to be home by 6:30 in time for the CBB's bedtime story.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Steve. And you know what? In and amongst the humour of that, and I was giggling, I had to stop myself from giggling out loud and disrupting your pitch. You made so many good points about how boards work and don't work within that. But the pitch is we should let babies run boards. So that's your last opportunity to vote. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for the pitches and to all of you being here today, our audience, for your votes. I guess we're on tenterhooks now. Do we all think they're a great idea? Are there some top rated proposals that are neck and just edging above the others, or are they all neck and neck? So I'm going to ask Leon and the team to say, how's that looking on the voting?
I think it's probably me. I had
Penny. It's Penny. Oh, Leon's going. It's not me. I'm not the one. I do apologise, Leon. I've just given Leon stress there. I didn't mean to do that. Penny.
Okay.
How's it looking?
I'll give you them in order from the most popular to the least popular with the percentage of yes.
Exciting.
So the most popular was BASMAs. We should have international trustees with on international boards with 97% yes, and a +1 in the chat. The second most popular was Katie's mandatory training for all first-time trustee with 92%. The third was Jill's. We should be less exclusive about who we recruit as trustees with 91%. So they were the 3 in the 90s. Then the next one was Ian's. We should put, and sorry, Ian, I've forgotten the exact wording, but we should put beneficiaries at the centre of our decision making, essentially 87%. Then Damon, 69%, for we should have more digital decision making. Tony, 68%, been the treasurer. Steve, I'm afraid 52%, bringing up the rear, even though we all probably, if we were ranking it on enjoyment, I think you would have been way out front.
That's brilliant. So it's your turn now as the audience to take advantage of the fact of these people, these great brains that have brought these proposals, shared their pitches with you, to ask any questions you've got. I've been able to sit back and just get excited about pressing a button. I've got to do some hard work at trying to chair a conversation now. But I think Basma, Katie and Jill were the top 3 ideas, which we'll focus on. But if you've got questions about any of the pitches or the proposals you've heard here, how they might work in your organisation, then feel free to pop a question in the chat. I'm going to while we're waiting for people to pop things in the chat, I'm going to ask Ian, your proposal about the beneficiaries point. I was really interested to hear the impact you had by taking trustees to see beneficiaries, and I'm wondering, is that a really rare occurrence, or do you see more charities connecting and engaging with beneficiaries and end users?
I think we sometimes just get it wrong. And I've seen, you know, people are genuine and they really do want to do things well. And I've seen them bring people onto boards, but actually, not mentioning any names, but we sat there, he was a black guy, he was a migrant, he was on the board and he was not supported, he wasn't brought in, it wasn't deliberate or anything, but he was disenfranchised. And often you will find that you may be working women's groups or sometimes women in ethnic minority communities. There are people who can't come into a board space and feel comfortable. And therefore we can't do it. Well, actually, my answer is if you can't take the mountain to Muhammad, you do it the other way round, and that the board should engage with people in a format, in a way that they can, because the bottom line is you do not know what your beneficiaries want unless you ask them.
Unless you ask them. No substitute for conversations and feedback, isn't it? Assumptions are always risky. So Basma, you got the number one number of votes, and we got some questions coming in for you in the chat. So the first one from Penny was to ask if you've got any top tips on how you recruit international trustees. Have you got any experience you could share with us there, Basma?
Yeah, actually, I will divide it between internal and external. Internally, which means to the organizations, actually being very open and very transparent that you have that need. You should not be closed. That we know it all, and we are not open to have international, not only people, personal, international experience, international lived experience outside of the UK or outside of the sector in the UK. So you have to acknowledge that need in order to provide impact and value of your work and whatever kind of work, and also long-term sustainable impact as well in the communities and on your work. So willingness, transparency, and being open to this option internally, and externally being also ready to discuss this and to explore with other charities, with other groups, like with the communities, if people are interested to be on the trustee, to be a trustee or on a trustee board, and to acknowledge that there is also a need for capacity building, or not also capacity building, learning from others. So we assume that when we bring that trustee, we have to build his or her capacity, but we don't acknowledge that we can learn from these experiences that we are bringing to the board. So it's mutual, it's jointly. So I encourage you to share more about that, to use creative ways of recruitment, going directly to communities, to organizations, to where people are available, are existing, using also your networks internationally as well, going to certain meetings, community meetings, organization meetings, approaching individuals if you know individuals are and also are interested to be a trustee. But also we have to acknowledge that it's a joint learning experience, that we are not teaching people to be trustee, but at the same time we are learning from these people, which is unfortunately the common norm now, that yes, we train people, but what about us being trained?
It's a great point, Basma, isn't it? That we and we think about this more broadly in recruitment, isn't it? We think it's a one-way process, and it's not. It's not. There's a mutuality about this, isn't it? About what we can get out of it. I love that point. There's a question for Jill that came through, and it was there on my screen. Now people have been asking other questions, and I've lost it. Oh, there we go. So Jill, how do we change the narrative about who will make a useful trustee? How do we go about making that change?
I think it has to start at board level. I tried to have this conversation with boards that I've sat on in the past. You know, can we bring in a shadow board? And there was, oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. But they need to have this sort of long level of experience. And you see, you need to start at the recruiting level, that actually you don't need that experience. What you need is the attitude and approach and opportunity to question things. And once you've got agreement from the board, then it's easier to go out and talk to people, potential trustees, and encourage them to apply. You're going to talk to universities, to the sort of community hubs that we have in Cornwall is a great place for recruiting people with that lived experience, places that they're going. But you have to get the narrative right behind it. You have to get that you're not just coming on as that token trustee with lived experience. You've got to get the buy-in from the board first.
Yeah, it's such a good point, isn't it? It's a shared endeavour, and I always talk about boards being teams, and we should think carefully about team dynamics and what we need to make the team excel. It's a great point, Jill. There's a question here for you, Katie, as one of our top 3 rated ones. Should someone, brackets the regulator, be enforcing mandatory training?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I personally think they should. If we're saying that all new trustees should go on a mandatory training, then I think, yes, it should be reported on, especially if a central body is going to hold that training. So, you know, for example, when you get your name registered on the Charity Commission website, when you become the trustee, should there be a tick box that you tick saying, yes, I have completed my mandatory training, and therefore it's registered against a charity on that website. But also there has to be, I guess, a sense of maybe flexibility and also ownership on the individual and the charity they're joining to make sure that they do it. You know, because the Charity Commission and or whatever body could hold this training isn't going to be going around tracing people. That has to get done, because that's, you know, it's a lot of work, that's a lot of people. So there also has to be that ownership of that individual and that charity to make sure that they do go on that training. But yeah, personally, I think it should be something that is reported on.
That's interesting as well, and I know it wasn't part of your pitch, so a bit of a segue, but there's first-time trustees and mandatory training, but then how do trustees keep their skills and knowledge up to date? You know, there were some comments in the chat about should this just be for first-time trustees, and I think that's an interesting angle. Damien, there was a question in the chat for you saying, what do you have any examples of digital decision-making applications and the benefits and how they work that supported your pitch and your proposal today?
Yeah, that was a really interesting question, because again, it's kind of a thing that is coming in rather than people having to figure out how to use it. I won't name them, but the charity that I'm involved with as an advisor is using Discord, which is really interesting. I would have never considered using Discord. So for those who don't know, Discord is actually a server that's mostly used for gaming. So for people streaming and that sort of stuff, and playing Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of nerdy stuff even I don't understand, and I'm a nerd. But it's really interesting because we've had it where it's really transparent that we've had the conversations between members of staff who are also on there and trustees on there, so that we can have a back and forth discussion. But we also have private spaces where just trustees can speak, or particular working groups. So I sit on a fundraising panel, for example, and that kind of goes in there. It's useful in a way that it's really easy to access from mobile phones, tablets, that sort of thing. And I can do it, you know, if I'm on a train or something, or if I'm sitting waiting in a hairdresser's. But at the same time, it's also can be a lot of noise as well. I'm not saying this is all positive. There's a lot of notifications. And And also, one of the issues using something like Discord compared to Google Docs, which I use for another charity I'm part of, is that it's not necessarily secure. So I wouldn't put the financial accounts or something like that, or anything sensitive in there as well. So there's pluses and minuses. But also for us as a charity, the charity I'm talking about is incredibly small. You know, it's run by one person essentially, and it's at no cost to us as well. So we can have more, I think, as many people as we want on Discord. So it has its uses, but again, it's for charities to investigate what works for them.
Really interesting. Thanks, Damon. And a really helpful reminder that it's not a one size fits all, right? If we're to promote real inclusion and engagement around boards, trustees, beneficiaries, all the different proposals we've had today, that doesn't mean to say that every charity is going to work in one way or another.
And the other thing I would say is also being mindful that some trustees have a digital property. So, you know, access to devices to use them isn't universal yet.
Absolutely. It's a really good point, isn't it? And it's a bit like the move to card payments and people who still use cash, and you have to be be wary of unintended consequences.
Yes.
There's some great stuff going on with the chat. I don't want to take us off topic though, about shadow trustees and people who have the potential to be trustees but can learn. And there's a really interesting debate going on there. And I share some of the nervousness. I hear shadow trustees and then I hear shadow directors and what that might mean in terms of legal accountability. But then I have seen in other sectors, organisations having what they call associate non-exec directors, so they don't have any of that accountability, but they can come and be involved in board members and start to observe board meetings and start to observe and learn. So there's a real distinction between the accountabilities and responsibilities and the opportunity to grow. So I'm loving that debate that's going on. There's a question for Tony, and it's a technical one, and I'm curious because I don't understand the question. So Tony, somebody put in the chat that they agree with your idea, but the question was, do we need a single point of contact for independent examiners? Interesting question.
I would say no, because it is going to be the board decision of who they appoint as an independent examiner. So really, it's a board appointment. So the independent examiner would really need to speak to all the board. They'll probably do a questionnaire. So I don't think it's one individual person. Obviously, whoever leads on finance in the organisation will be working very closely with the independent examiner. But it is a board appointment, and the independent examiner will be reporting back to the board. So maybe one person is the conduit, but he's not responsible or accountable, or the report doesn't go back to him, it goes back to the board.
Great, thank you so much for that. See, this is what, because you owned up to being a technical specialist right at the end of your pitch. So that means I can ask you technical questions, you see. So sorry about that. Lots of great feedback again in the chat on different ideas. A kind of a segue from the question I asked you at the start, Ian. Penny's asked, you talked about what you did in your individual charity. I think there was Penny's questions framed as a bit more about what can we as a sector do to get charities more focused on beneficiaries rather than relying on the initiatives of individual boards. Have you got any thoughts about that?
Can I be provocative?
But I think given the purpose of this session, feel free, Ian.
Excellent. Right. In private companies, they don't work properly. We all know that. But at the top, there are people who've got skin in the game. They are there to make that company make a profit. They have a real vested interest. You don't get that in the charity sector. You get funders, but they're interested in the project. I'm talking about how you run the charity. And at the bottom end in a commercial company, you've got customers. Yeah, they get hoodwinked, but actually your customers can walk. So within a private company, there are drivers at the top and the bottom of the organization that are at least poking it in the right direction. And we haven't got that, and the Commission doesn't do that. So I think part of it is about helping boards and chairs see the benefits. It's like the whole diversity debate. Yes, there is a whole ethical dimension to it, but frankly, there's a major performance issue around this. If you read stuff McKinsey out in the US, diverse boards are far more effective than those that aren't. The charity sector would be one hell of a lot better at what it does if it made its boards diverse. So there's part of that. How are we going to make that happen? Well, look at, now I'll be very provocative, look at the governance code. It is fluffy, motherhood and apple pie. What it should be is a percentage of your board must be of another gender. It should be your board must reflect your beneficiary base. And I wouldn't give this to the Charity Commission. I would give anything to the Charity Commission that was important, because they won't do it. But what I would do is I would make mandatory reporting. This is where we are. This is what we're doing. If you're not doing it well, then in actual fact, you need to be reporting on things like positive disability, etc. And we actually need to hold these people to account, and we need to report it. And what we then need, the only thing that matters is money. Money talks. So if the grant makers then go, this matters, we will start taking this into account, it's in the annual report, then you've got a result.
That's great. Thanks, Ian. Just going to come back to Tony, and then Steve, I'm going to come to you because you're excellent. Other than questions about do you go to maternity wards to recruit your boards, slightly flippantly in the chat, you haven't had a chance to contribute, so I will bring you in a moment. But Tony, I saw you respond to the question about finance committees, but there was another question about if you've been a board where you've had a treasurer position and then you want to move away from it, how do you manage that transition?
Be brave. It's going to be scary, but offer additional training, finance training. Finance is scary to most people. I accept that. I understand that. But by having a treasurer, naturally the other trustees are shirking their responsibility and just faking and saying, we don't know what we don't know, and leave it to the treasurer. He does this. And that's the wrong attitude in 2023. It was fine when we had a treasurer 50, 60 years ago to come in and count the money in cash after a fete and write the checks. But those days are gone. We would live in a digital age. Everything is online. It's all about shared responsibility and collective responsibility according to the government and everything. And that's what the accounting world is expecting. And that's how charities are going to be measured going forward.
Great. Thanks, Tony. And I'm going to steal Penny's excellent question in the chat, but it's because, as I said, when you finished your pitch, Steve, you did make a lot of really quite serious points using the provocation of letting babies be on boards. So how do we tackle some of those issues that you flagged in your presentation? How do we get boards and trustees behaving better?
I was quite comfortable not being asked any questions.
Sorry, you don't get away with that, Steve. Sorry.
I could justify this bizarre argument that I've been happy to put forward. How do we get better at all of it? I think essentially when I'm doing workshops with boards and working with boards, essentially a lot of it comes back to a lack of clarity around roles, responsibilities, not even so much legal duties a lot of the time, because as people have mentioned, there's a lot of stuff out there where we can learn that. It's really about roles and responsibilities and where that fits in terms of the charity's culture and the charity's values. And one of the things I find really interesting about boards is quite often they're conversations that have never been had. Trustees get recruited with the best will in the world. Usually they know somebody or they've got right skills, and sometimes it's kind of a arm behind the back job. And then before they know it, they're in this position, and you've almost got to work backwards then and think, well, how can we go back and give them the information that they needed at the start? So in terms of how we do all of it, I think it all comes back to that first experience on the board and making sure that people are really clear about their purpose and their role and their responsibility.
It's a great point, Stephen. Having had the privilege of serving on a number of boards in the charity sector and other sectors in the last 15 or 20 years, I've always been surprised when I join a board in my induction process. Well, A, how poor the induction process is, number one. B, if I do get to meet other board members and I say, oh, what are our goals or what is our purpose, that I get completely different collection of answers, and you think this is the senior strategic guiding mind and decision-making body for this organization, and there's no clarity on focus and purpose, and everything will stem from that when you think about root cause of issues and challenges. So yeah, I see it sadly too often. Yeah,
for legal reasons, because it's been recorded and shared publicly. Now, I don't hang around the maternity block. I just want that to be on the recording.
It's very good that you shared that, Steve. Just for the record, I think it's clear we could debate all of these topics for days. but I do have to at least start to try and draw us to a close. And because I wanted to spend a couple of minutes just saying thank you. I know when Penny's shout out went on LinkedIn for proposals and ideas for this session, we had another 19 brilliant suggestions that we didn't get anywhere near, and they spanned everything from accessibility of trusteeship, the role of employers in helping people to take on trustee roles, inclusion on boards, regulation and structure, trustee learning and development, and that includes learning from one another as trustees, and the impact of charities. And when you think about the range of those topics, and also, even as Steve said in the chat, 52% of us voted for the baby idea, but the popularity of the proposals that are put here, it shows how much opportunity there is to do things to improve the practice and to support trustees in their roles and the impact they have. Because if we have fantastic trustees who are well supported, have clarity, have the skills they need, have the support they need, are connected with their beneficiaries and end users, then that organisation is going to be making a bigger difference to society, and it's going to be increasing its impact. And ultimately, I suspect that's why we're all passionate about this sector and making a difference. So I'm absolutely certain the Getting on Board team will be taking away all these ideas and the other things that were submitted and making sure that they don't get lost, and we do something meaningful and purposeful to drive change and improvement in the sector. I wanted to thank everybody for your time and energy this evening. The chat has just been amazing. I could just sat and watch a chat, and I kept remembering I had another job to do. The pitches were brilliant. I only got to press the klaxon once, darn it. But this fabulous week, this fabulous festival of trusteeship is such an important part of the calendar now, and you've all played your part in such a really engaging and fun session. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand back to Leon, who's going to do all the sensible bits to close out the session.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks, everybody. The chat has been alive. We captured lots of it, and of course, the session has been recorded, so you will be able to see it back too. And if you came late, you can watch the pictures back if you only got to see a couple of them. We are getting towards the end of the third day of the festival already, and it goes by very quick. We've got 2 sessions left today for you. At 18:30, so in 40 minutes time, we've got Navigating Barriers to Trusteeship, and then straight after that at 7:30 we've got the networking session that Sapna has put into the chat function. I'm also now just posting the closing message that we use in the outro, so there is an evaluation form in that, and of course links to the rest of the timetable for the week, and another link, so you've got it twice, to the networking session that we've got later. Otherwise, that just leaves me to say thank you very much to all of the panelists for taking part today and for using the buzzer once.
Damon said I can press it before we finish, so
we'll press it before. Well, just before we all go, have a good evening, and over to Julie.
Right, thank you so much, and for the last time, bye. Thank you.
Thank you.